Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, and I welcome you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment, and another FRESCA FUEGO review. This one of a more somber note based on just current events in the world, steps back as a society, in my estimation, that we have taken in some instances, unfortunately. But yeah, we talking the new Spike Lee joint, man, Defy Bloods, and you know, dare I say this is the best movie I've seen this year? Yeah, it's the best movie I've seen this year. I've championed smaller projects like The Lodge, or even one that I had a ton of fun with like The Gentleman, but none of these have anything as timely and as prolific to say as this magnum opus, you know, dare I put it as such. But yeah, this film features a performance, well, an ensemble of performances, really. I mean, a bunch of friends who have basically, they were called BLOODS, man, and they were back there in Vietnam. Our lead character, Paul, played by Delroy Lindo, I believe, British actor. Never would have thought, British actor. I'd seen him in Malcolm X, Crooklyn. Those are a couple Spike Lee films that he had been in previously. Few others, man. Get Shorty. I mean, yeah, I recognized him. He has an extensive background of theater and stage, both, you know, acting and directing. Immensely, amazingly talented. I never would have thought for a second dude was British. So I mean, once again, the level of just thespians that we get from the other side of the pond blows my mind continually. But his performance as Paul is about as riveting, heartbreaking, soul-crushing, and amazing as anything I've seen on screen in a number of years. It's at the heart of this in many ways. You know, some may say best supporting when the Oscars get around, and I know that the Academy is thankfully rethinking things after pushing back the Oscars 2 months into April because of, yeah, we know, not that state of the world in this country specifically, but just the entirety of this planet with COVID and theaters being closed and all this other stuff. This was always supposed to be just Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if they were going the Roma route or you know, others that have tried to, you know, be in theaters for like a showing or two. The Irishman also did it recently for Scorsese. But yeah, this is one that if it doesn't get that according attention, I will be beyond irate. But there are, you know, myself as a white guy, there is a lot here that I cannot relate to, but there's no way that you can't empathize and just feel not just the pain of the current situations we're enduring, but, you know, the pain of those who fought in a war that very few agreed with, and that there were excessive protests from every gender and race here in the States and in various other areas of the world back in the 60s and 70s as well. So beyond Spike basically taking a look at so much revisionist history and overlooked African Americans, and, you know, going all the way back to Revolutionary War times, and, you know, through various other conflicts, whether at home or abroad, whether, you know, waged as huge wars or, you know, battles city by city amongst Americans. There is so much that he just brings to light and intersperses amazingly. He directs the hell out of this film, and whereas something like BlacKkKlansman, that it was one of my top films of the year, a year or two ago when it came out, amazing performances by, you know, Washington and Driver and stuff, but I feel like there's enough whimsy at times in that film, and we do get humor here, we really do. But with recent events, as well as the fact that while there is humor in this movie, it's not to the level of the humor and some of there wasn't silliness in BlacKkKlansman, and goddamn, especially with how that film ended, with showing, you know, real, you know, marches and stuff, and the world has only gotten crazier since he put out BlacKkKlansman. But I feel like this is more the right film, the right time, and it's much more immensely encompassing, dare I say. I'm sure others would disagree, and as I mentioned, my perspective is not the same, nor could it ever be because of this. But I still, you know, am fascinated and frightened, and it's just so wonderfully performed by all these guys. Now, granted, Clark, God his last name is eluding me. I want to say Clark Peters, but if I butchered that, I'm so very sorry. His character Otis in this is really the counterbalance, to Paul's character, played by Delroy, as I mentioned. And so, Clark's character of Otis versus, Delroy's of Paul, they are the respective yins and yangs of this group of friends who have returned to Vietnam. They are basically... They allege that they are searching for the remains of a character played by Chadwick Boseman in flashbacks, and this film does intersperse. It's widescreen for the stuff that's taking place present day, and then it goes pan and scan, so it zooms in when you can tell that it's flashing back, and it's just seamlessly done. Once again, credit to Spike and his entire, team along with this film to get that seamless visual look on top of jumping and interspersing photographs and all kinds of stock film footage, both from the Vietnam War, from protests at the time, news coverage, all kinds of things like that. All of these various pieces, it doesn't feel disjointed and jagged. They all fit together seamlessly and very powerfully, dare I say. But they're not just back there trying to find Storm and Norman. There's something else in play, and the something else in play kind of gave me Three Kings vibes a little bit. It's different than that. That was a Gulf War, story and stuff, but they had found some treasure that they are going back to unearth as well. So it's kind of a dual mission of sorts, and they are so tripped out to be back in Saigon and just see how Americanized the country is. At one particular point, they are talking about, hey man, we could have won this war in a few days if we just sent them, Mickey D's and the Colonel, and it's just funny because you can see how Americanized the country has become. They're in this club at one particular point, they're dancing, they're drinking, they're having a jolly old time. They haven't seen each other properly in years, at least as a unit, so to speak, is at least the vibe that we get. And the DJ at this club in Vietnam, he's got Apocalypse Now, like the logo of the film, in the background at the club. It's just, there's a strange self-awareness that I'm assuming is pretty prevalent over there in the fact that the American War, as it's referred to various times in the film, the Americans lost, and Vietnamese didn't want to fight that war, and most of the Americans over there didn't want to fight it either. And this just explores that fallout, but also how there's lingering effects, and not just of the PTSD, because our gents, as they go on their, they initially have this little tour that a guide sets them up on, and then he insists that they let him go with when they just go out into the jungle, and they're like, man, we know these jungles, we were here for years, we know them extremely well, and we've got our GPS and all this other stuff, we'll be fine. And so he relents, and being a younger guy with a father who fought in the conflict and stuff like that, he lets them get at it, and he doesn't know the full extent of what they're trying to do. And there's also another dude in play who is supposed to help them out with getting the gold converted and able to be brought back, which is, I forget the name of the actor, I believe it's Jean-Pierre Jeunet, something, but he was Leon the Professional. So if you're familiar with that actor, he is spot on and tremendous thespian in his own right as well. So he's another interesting character, an actor that I wasn't aware that I was going to be seeing. And I also was unaware that I just basically went into this knowing that Spike Lee had made a movie about Vietnam. I didn't know that the predominance of it was going to be taking place in present day, but that was almost more fascinating to a degree because, those aftershocks, those lingering things, and there's a couple other characters we meet in this who basically go out into the jungles. It's a French woman and her two co-dudes that are with her. One is kind of a love interest, the other one like a best friend type. And they essentially go out into the jungles in rural Vietnam, and they find landmines that are still out there and still make that rugged terrain incredibly dangerous. And those landmines do play a part at a particular point in this movie without getting into particular spoilers. But you have to assume that there is going to be a lot of soul searching, a lot of just facing of personal demons amongst these guys, and the bonds are tested, and there's also just trying to look at this country with new eyes. And once again, this character of Paul just floored me in so many ways. There is a scene where they're going down this river, and there's all these it's almost like a food market of sorts, but it's on a river, and it's all these guys in boats trying to sell them things. And his character, Delroy's character Paul, he has a moment, man, and you feel it to your core. It is so intense. But then there's another well, like just that message of just rage and, you know, lingering anger that is still with him, and he's dropping the G word, and he is just reverting back into that mode from being there, especially as they get out of the developed area of Saigon and into the muck of what they were stuck in and faced so many just fearsome, frightening things there. It's counterbalanced with Chadwick Boseman's character of Norm, who is their fallen friend, who they're going back for along with the gold. But it is definitely not a, oh, we're here for gold and the secondary thing. It is a very valiant and compassionate effort from these guys, and the love is very, very real, not just amongst them, but for their fallen friend as well. And as they flash back to him after they find out that Martin Luther King has been assassinated somewhere in the middle of the film, there's an immediate reaction to rage, and his character of Norman Chadwick's is like, Martin's message was one of peace, and we have to keep it together. We can't fall to the level of those who have wronged us and wronged not just, you know, these civil rights movements, but our people in general. We have to rise above in a different fashion, you know, as opposed to lowering ourselves to that evil level. And the other guys they're not having it, at least for the most part, you know, Paul especially. And you can tell that, you know, the loss of his friend and just everything that has happened since then, even the fact that he is a pro-Trump America supporter. He's wearing a Make America Great Again hat when they're out in the jungle. It's just, his character is so multifaceted, and it's just, he is as layered as any character I can remember, as I mentioned, that I've recently seen on screen. This movie was tough to watch quite a bit, not just from the stock footage of everything from, you know, dead Vietnamese children to, I mean, showing the shot to the head and so many other, you know, the burning monks, so many iconic images that still stick with us today and horrify us and remind us of just how awful humanity can be, you know, that evil nature that I personally believe does inherently exist within far too many people, and we have to work past that evil human nature, you know. But it does really boil down to being raised with care and compassion, and there are certain people who just do not get that. They are fed hate from birth, and that's what begets hate, and why it continues from generation to generation to generation. These are all things that are explored in such an in-depth degree here. I mean, yeah, I know Spike was a little disappointed with some of the stuff that went down at the Oscars with BlacKkKlansman. It did win some awards. I believe it won for screenplay. God, man, if I'm wrong, so many movies and so many awards and so much to keep track of. But, you know, if this is not one where he is nominated at least in all of those categories, we don't know what the other 6 months of this year have to hold, but this should be another slew of nominations, you know, for everything from cinematography to directing to picture to actors. I mean, I would honestly say, you know, Clark for a supporting and Delroy for, you know, lead actor, but that's just me personally. It's quite a film. It's quite a film, and it's just the poignant placing of its release, which I know had been in place long before everything started really raging again. This film got me, you know, and I can only imagine how it would get a Vietnam vet, any of my African American friends, you know, from whatever age level or gender. This film is intense, and I'm giving this, I believe, my first 5 out of 5 Fuego Fireballs for this year. Yeah, this is, I mean, dare I say maybe it would be 4.5 because of some conveniences of a couple characters who show up during a pivotal scene in the early third act. But aside from a minor gripe or two like that, and the fact that it is over 2.5 hours, it doesn't quite feel its runtime, but it is slightly long in the tooth, and that may be rougher for some. But anytime it's like that 0.5, I have to go either up or I have to go down, and most def is this one going up. Another tremendous film from, you know, one of the most important in I mean, definitely all of the last, number of decades of filmmaking here in the United States. So I've been Jaime En Fuego, and you can find Wa on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, just like you see spelled below. I cover nerd-tastic stuff like Star Wars and, comic book whateverness, and, I just did a review of Artemis Fowl. It was so funny to watch, like, this week, maybe the worst film I've seen this year and probably the best film I've seen this year. So that was quite a counterbalance. That review will be coming up this weekend, but I also do retro Fuego reviews where I look back at something older. I'm actually going to revisit Do the Right Thing because it's been a long time since I've watched it. I feel like that's another poignant one for this particular period. Lots of other stuff, indie art house drama, all the way to goofy comedy. So I do try to cover a lot and keep it, nice and multifaceted. But if you're familiar with me from my other channel, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel, that is where we also cover everything spooktacular under the proverbial umbrella: trailer reactions, reviews of films, television, comic books. I do a weekly Stephen King show, unboxings, video game let's plays, everything under the proverbial scarific sun. Just today, as I filmed this review, I had taken a week away from YouTube just to kind of process a little bit more of what I have been witnessing in this country and to a higher degree this world. So I just took a little breather, but back at it for the ongoing. And over on the horror show, though, we did a trailer reaction to the amazing prequel little animated thing that just came out today for Lost Woods director's new Candyman film that comes out this September, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, we've got lots of great stuff over there, man. We just also did a review of Becky, which was this crazy Lulu Wilson from Haunting of Hill House going after these neo-Nazi assholes, played by Kevin James, of all people. Joel McHale is also in that film. So that's just a few recent things that we've done, but yeah, that's going to be the extent of it for today, everybody. So I extend a grande gracias once more, and until the reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike. Say thank you if you made it this far into the video, because I really do greatly appreciate it, and I'm hopeful we share more film palaver sooner rather than later. Peace. Stay safe.